Before we hear from Andriy Lyubka, I have the pleasure of welcoming back to the Kennan Institute Katerina Smogly. She's, of course, well known now around Washington. She's counselor for political affairs and public diplomacy at the Embassy of Ukraine in the USA. But for me, she will always be a former Kennan Institute scholar and representative of the Kennan Institute in Ukraine, and therefore sort of part of us. We like to claim Katya, particularly as she's moved on to so many wonderful, grander things. So Katya, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Lupal. And great pleasure to be at the Kennan Institute's event and at the Wilson Center. My pleasure is dual because it is the second visit that Andriy Lyubka is making to Kennan Institute and the Wilson Center. And I remember that in May 2017, an email came to my mailbox as I was leading the Kennan Institute's office in Kiev from my dear colleague Joe Drazen, who is here with us as well. And Joe asked me a question if I know Andriy Lyubka and if I can recommend him for an event here at the Kennan Institute. You can see, by the way, the announcement of that event at the back of the room. The Kennan Institute has its own archives, and I hope that we will have the second edition after this event, and maybe Andriy, when he comes to the third time, will have a series of Andriy Lyubka's presentation at the Wilson Center. So Joe Drazen's colleague from Columbia University introduced Andriy back then as a great candidate to be a guest speaker at the Wilson Center because he is from Transcarpathia, lives in Uzhgorod, and perhaps the most active writer of his generation in Ukrainian, traveling all over Ukraine and at forums in Europe with presentations. He is an example of young Ukrainian writer who is great at interacting with the public, discussing today's Ukraine. In one of his latest books, the novel Karbid, he tells the story of a group of Ukrainians attempting to construct a secret tunnel between Uzhgorod and the European Union. It is, of course, quite topical and could launch some interesting conversations at serious events. Well, now Andriy in Washington, D.C. With a different mission. He has already spent 4 weeks in Northern America, traveling in Canada, now in the United States. So he visited 5 cities in Canada: Ottawa, Edmonton, Calgary, Montreal, and Toronto. Been to Buffalo, New York, Chicago, San Francisco for some personal visits. And after 2 very active days in Washington, D.C., we had a wonderful presentation last night at the Ukraine House. Andriy will travel to New York for a big Ukraine Cultural Festival that has been organized by Razum for Ukraine nonprofit organization. So I won't talk too much about Andriy's recent novel, The War from the Rear, but I can only thank Andriy for his volunteerism, because after the full-fledged aggression began in February 2022, Andriy stopped writing and devoted 100% of his time to supporting Ukraine's armed forces. He has already fundraised almost $2 million and provided more than 300 vehicles to the front lines to support the effort of our brave defenders in the east and south of Ukraine. He is named one of the 100 leaders of Ukraine by Ukraine's prominent internet media Ukrainska Pravda, been awarded by the Aspen Institute in Kiev as an exemplary value-based leader, and also received a number of awards from Minister of Defense of Ukraine for his volunteerism. I'm very much looking forward to Andriy's presentation on Ukraine's culture front, the phrase in his own words that he absolutely detests, because in his opinion there can be only one true front line nowadays, and it is one on the battlefield. But culture clearly plays a very important role in our defense effort. And let me finish by once again thanking Dr. Rubel for his research on this subject and his brilliant publications on this matter. And I would also donate today another book to the Wilson Center Library, which is titled Culture versus War, which tells personal stories of many cultural figures in Ukraine who had devoted now their lives to supporting Ukraine's strive for independence and sovereignty and statehood. So, Andriy.
Hello, thank you very much for having me here. It is a real pleasure and honor to be to return to the Wilson Center, and I'm looking now at this poster for the event we had here 7 years ago, and smuggling Ukraine westward. I'm really happy that this process is, is continuing, and we do our best. But now it is not about smuggling. Now it is about official and normal way of reforming Ukraine. And I'm very happy to be here also not only as a writer, but also as a director of independent think tank in Ukraine, which is called the Institute for Central European Strategy. And we are working on building new neighborhood with our neighbors, European neighbors. Our main goal is actually to help Ukraine and to help Ukrainian officials to solve different questions with our neighbors, with national minority rights and so on. So if you will be also interested in this topic, I could share some thoughts on it after the presentation. Now I would like to to start my presentation about the role of Ukrainian culture during the war. And of course it is not so obvious topic, but I think that it is really worth to raise this question, because we have some kind of phenomenon, and recently, unfortunately, news from Ukraine are not so good, and maybe when we speak about Ukrainian culture, we will have opportunity to share some good news and to show you some trend which is very important for our everyday life during the full-scale invasion. And as you see at the poster of this presentation, you can see a selfie, and of course selfish people like to put selfie on first slide, but this selfie is very important because I shot it 1 year ago in Zaporizhia. Zaporizhia is a city which is located really close to the front line, and it is so close that usually you don't have opportunity to receive air siren alert. Usually you have missile explosions, and only in 2 or 3 minutes you receive these alerts of danger. And 1 year ago, together with Serhiy Zhadan and Irina Tsilik, we had a poetry reading there. And of course, it is impossible now to gather people in some regular, normal venues. And it was organized in bomb shelter underground. And you can see a lot of people there. A lot of them are really young. And more than 700 people registered for the event, and unfortunately this venue could receive only 300 people, and it was some kind of a conflict at the door, because much more people would like to come and to listen than it was possible to host. And I think that these kind of events can show the great shape within Ukrainian society, and the great shape of actually people from eastern and southern parts of Ukraine, which are now really eager to discover or rediscover the Ukrainian identity, and they really need now some kind of cultural support, because it helps them to to enter and to make first and very important step to building new united political identity in Ukraine. So I would like to show you few examples of what it is difficult to read. Yeah, so we will skip it. Yeah, it is much easier now. So these examples, for example, 1 month ago, our main theater established new ticketing platform. Why? Because it was really hard to buy a ticket for theater performance in Ukraine because of the lines, and for example, when they started this new ticket platform, you have to use your government ID and you have to go through it in order to receive your ticket with your name, and you can buy only, for example, one plus one more ticket. When they started this new website, they had sold out in 13 minutes for the theater, which has some 800 chairs, and it was really like a shock for all of us because the performance is a classical Ukrainian play called Witch of Konotop. It is, you know, it was written 1833. It is nothing contemporary, but quality of this performance is so high that people are waiting for tickets, you know, in for 3 or 4 months in advance. So they sold 800 tickets in 13 minutes using this government identification program. So it also took some time, and it is not only about this theater, but in other Ukrainian cities you also will have a problem to buy, not only to go to some cultural event, but to buy a ticket and visit some cultural event, not only in Kyiv, but in Lviv, Uzhhorod, and even in Kharkiv. Another example is about the Okan Elze. It is famous music band, maybe best one in Ukraine when we speak about the pop rock, and they have the 30 years anniversary now. By the way, they will have a concert in 2 days in New York, but in September they started to sell tickets for the big concert in Kyiv, and because it is, once more, impossible to gather people at open area, now the biggest cultural venue in Ukraine is Palace of Sports, like hockey hall, yeah, and it is approximately 10,000 visitors could enter for the event. So they announced the concert and sold out immediately all the tickets. They say, okay, we will give one more concert next day. And when they post it on their Facebook and Instagram, they sold these 10,000 tickets immediately. So after that, they organized the third concert. And actually, so the final was that they had 5 concerts in a row every day. And they sold more than 50,000 tickets. These tickets are not so cheap. Actually, they are not cheap at all. And you know, Kyiv is not so. Actually, population of Kyiv is not like it was before the full-scale invasion. Still, a lot of people emigrate from the city, evacuated from the city, and we are facing now deep economic crisis and a lot of different problems connected with shortages, electricity, destroying of our energy facilities, and so on. So, for people, it was really important to go to this concert, and they really consider should they invest to the tickets, or maybe it will be better for them, you know, to save this money, and they have chosen go to the concert because it plays a great role not only in musical life, and I will return to it later. This is the opening of Vesel bookstore in Kyiv. More than 1,000 visitors waited in the line to enter the new bookstore. And it is Kyiv, okay, so maybe in capital it is something different, but I am from the western part of Ukraine. I am from Uzhhorod. Uzhhorod is a small city, a very sleepy provincial town. It has only 120,000 inhabitants, and during the full-scale invasion, in my city, there are 5 new bookshops which were opened only during the last 2 years. And just for comparison, during 30 years of Ukrainian independence, we had 2 bookshops, and during 2 years of full-scale invasion, we have 5 more new bookshops with no government support, with no support from the municipality and so on. So it is like a business. They open these bookshops because they can afford, the situation when they can pay a normal rent in city center. And I have to say that actually all creative industry in Ukraine now is one of the most profitable businesses in Ukraine, because it is really plays really important role for Ukrainians. And the answer to this paradox is quite simple. During the war, to the great surprise of many, culture did not marginalize or lose its influence, even though it is far behind security in Maslow's pyramid of needs. On the contrary, culture has ceased to be an entertainment and again has taken the place of one of the key spheres of human life. Culture helps people not to go crazy in this difficult and tragic time, restores a sense of dignity as opposed to the purely biological reflex of self-preservation that permeates wartime everyday life, and provides answers to complex questions about the formation of national identity and the creation of a single political nation out of diverse people. Ukrainian culture makes us Ukrainians, and it is these cultures that allow us to draw a clear line of demarcation from Russians and imperial culture. In sum, we can conclude that during the full-scale invasion, culture became an important element of security system, no more and no less. And I will try to prove you this. But first of all, of course, when we speak about Ukrainian culture, I would like to emphasize that we have wonderful and beautiful examples of cultural revival, cultural renaissance now in Ukraine. Of course, it took place, but war is about destruction, first of all. And I will show you some statistics about the destroyed monuments and historical sites in Ukraine. So, according to the Ukrainian Ministry of Culture, more than 1,000 objects of cultural heritage and historic sites was totally destroyed in Ukraine during this already 2.5 years of full-scale invasion. And of course, a majority of them are located in Donetsk, Luhansk, Kharkiv and Zaporizhia regions, provinces. But of course, this data is not actually I think that the number is much higher because we don't have access to check occupied territories and what is going on there. So according to Ukrainian Ministry of Culture, you can see that a lot of different, very important archaeological, historical, cultural sites were destroyed, and these numbers are really high. And I would like to highlight this fact that actually Eastern Ukraine, because of the Bolshevik terror and two world wars, was really poor in sense of of cultural heritage, because it was destroyed during these wars and terror. So now, after this full-scale invasion, we can speak about some kind of cultural cleansing. When we refer to Balkan Wars, we usually speak about ethnic cleansings, but now we can speak also about cultural cleansing of the Ukrainian cultural landscape at the occupied territories, and it is very important. So, and it could be proved with facts I will provide you later. But also, it is important to say that our losses are not only in terms of cultural heritage. All cultural infrastructure is destroyed at the occupied and frontline territories. And once more, according to the report of our Ministry of Culture, more than 2,000 cultural infrastructure facilities were also destroyed. It is not like monuments or some important buildings or so on. In this number you can see cultural halls, libraries, art education institution, museums, galleries, so some kind of new buildings, but actually the number is really high. So if you will sum these two numbers, it means that more than 3,000 objects of Ukrainian cultural life at the front line and occupied territories were destroyed by Russians during these 2.5 years. According to our ombudsman, more than 200 million of Ukrainian books were burned from the libraries and school libraries in eastern and southern Ukraine, and this number is so huge that for me as for a writer it is unimaginable that something like this can take place in 21st century. When we speak about these destroying monuments and objects, it is important to highlight some symbolic losses of very important places. And first of all, I would like to remind you about the Mariupol Drama Theater, which was destroyed early in March 2022, with a lot of people who were hiding in the bomb shelter underground the theater. By the way, this theater now, the troupe of this theater is relocated and performing in my hometown in Uzhhorod. So we lost the building, but actually most of the creative staff of the theater are relocated to Uzhhorod, and they are quite good and popular. Another symbolic loss, it is Grigory Skovoroda Museum. I was very happy to see Skovoroda monument in front of Ukraine House. I think that it is a very important figure in our history and philosophy. And what is important to highlight, when we speak about Grigory Skovoroda Museum, it is not located at the front line, where accidentally during the battles you can destroy something or something can burn out. It was destroyed by 3 missiles, and it was, a direct target for Russian army, because this place is so important and symbolic for Ukrainians. So when you destroy it, probably you can say after that there is no Ukrainian signs of Ukrainian culture or Ukrainian people here in this territory. So it is some kind of a strategy to burn and target cultural institutions. And for example, Russians also destroyed two very nice and cozy small museums of Ukrainian painters, Maria Bremachenko in Kyiv district. It is some kind of Ukrainian naive painting, very nice. And also the museum of Polina Raiko. It is her memorial house in Oleshki. So when they blew up the dam of Kakhovka hydroelectric power station 1 year ago, this house of Polina Raiko was also destroyed. You can see on your left some kind of mosaic panels of the famous Ukrainian artist and political dissident during Soviet era, Alla Horska. And these two panels were part of public space in Mariupol. Both of them are destroyed by Russians now. But I would like to show you the response of Ukrainian society to these losses. This year we had a big exhibition dedicated to Alla Horska in Kyiv, in one of the major cultural galleries in Ukraine, в Українському домі. And it was because of the fact that she was a dissident, and a lot of artifacts and a lot of her works were stolen or destroyed during these years. It was like something more like about hers and actually an exhibition of her works. And more than 50,000 people bought tickets to visit this museum, and it is natural response of Ukrainian society when we learned about this demolition of these pannons in Mariupol. It was natural response to go, and to see her legacy and in some way support memory of her and her important work. Also, war is not only about houses and buildings and historical sites. It is first of all about the people, and a lot of people who represent Ukrainian culture were killed during these years. And Ukrainian Pen Center, together with Reporters Media, created a web platform, People of Culture Killed During the War, and they do their best to gather these stories, to create some kind of portraits, biographies, to speak with their relatives and friends, and to preserve memory about them. And unfortunately, at this website and of this project, we have already more than 130 portraits of different cultural activists and artists who were killed by the war. Of course, the number will be much higher if you will gather all of the people linked to Ukrainian culture, but this website is especially about the people for whom cultural activities was, their occupation, their professional life. And it is more than 130 portraits already there. I would like to recall this example of Volodymyr Vakulenko. He was a Ukrainian poet, and originally he is from Kharkiv region, from a small village near Izium area, which was occupied during the first weeks of the invasion. And he was a poet. He was known in these literary circles, but of course he wasn't some kind of he was a hip, like, I don't know how to say, but he was like rock star lifestyle guy. So he wasn't part of cultural elite. He was not so famous or popular or important, yeah. But still, after the occupation, Russians came to his house and asked him to go with them. And he was questioned and beaten. After that, he returned to his home, and he buried his diary of occupation. He was taking some notes during all of the dates. It was written by hand, and he buried it in his yard. And in 1 week, they returned, took him from his house. And only after the liberation of Kharkiv region, we discovered that he was killed by 2 shots from Makarov pistol into his head. And he was buried in a forest not far from Izium. And after that, Ukrainian female writer Victoria Melina went to this house and started to search for this diary. And she actually found it and publish it. And in the entry word for this publication, she wrote that I myself feel something like I am part of killed renaissance, shot renaissance. It is termed from Ukrainian cultural history, from Stalin era cleansings, when they shot a lot of prominent representatives of Ukrainian culture. And in 2023, she was written that I feel like I am in this 1937, yeah, that they are hunting for us. And unfortunately, Victoria Melina herself was killed during the missile attack in Kramatorsk last year. And it is one more huge loss for our culture and our nation. And it is important to remember her and her wonderful job. Of course, a lot of Ukrainian artists and cultural figures went to the army. Part of them went to the army voluntarily at the beginning of the war. Part of them were mobilized during the mobilized campaign because according to the martial law we have now in Ukraine, there is no difference. Are you poet or artist or taxi driver, I don't know, or someone else? And a lot of people were mobilized to enlisted to the army, and it is very interesting phenomenon because within the Ukrainian army we have now some kind of military, real military unit which is called Kulturny Desant, cultural forces in Ukrainian, and it is more than 70 different Ukrainian artists who serve in the army, and their main goal is to work with military brigades and units which are fighting. So they are going to some frontline places, gather soldiers, and make some kind of cultural events for them in order to help their mental state and to give them some kind of entertainment. And this unit consists of very different people. So songwriters, one of the head is Kolya Serha. He is like rap singer in Ukrainian. They have also some stand-up comedians. They also have a lot of graphic designers and painters, and their goal is also, for example, to create new emblemas and new logos for Ukrainian military units. Poets in this unit are writing some kind of anthems for military units and so on. So it is really interesting phenomenon. They gave more than 200 concerts or events at the front line and in other Ukrainian cities.
300 in the United States.
And yeah?
Yes. 300 in the United States, all over America. They traveled, calling them the thank you concerts for all the support that we received. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. I would like to show you a few portraits because it is usually nice to see faces. And in the center you can see Andriy Lyubka. He is very famous singer from Boombox music band, and he is now serving in the army, and he became known as a soldier during first days of the invasion when he was singing Ukrainian folk song "Ой, у лузі червона калина." It was Empty Cave, and he was just shooting from his phone. And after that, Pink Floyd helped him, and they also play this music. He's still in the army now. He works with evacuating of wounded soldiers and with drones, so he's still in the army. On your left, you can see Yarina Chornohus. She's very nice and strong poetical voice. She received our biggest national prize in literature this year, Taras Shevchenko Award, and she is a wonderful poet, very charismatic, but also she is very important because she is one of the female leaders of Ukrainian army, and she fights not only Russians, but she fights also some kind of, post-Soviet traditions in Ukrainian army. And actually, as a feminist, she fight for more rights and better situation for women in Ukrainian army, and we are very thankful for her. Pavlo Vyshababa, on your right, it is wonderful example of how things changed in Ukraine, because it is very famous poet now, but he's originally from Donetsk region, from Kramatorsk, but he avoided all official doors to Ukrainian literature. He became popular because he is a soldier now. He's writing his poetry, and he making some reels and Instagram stories with this poetry, with these landscapes and so on. And he had no books. He published his first book just one year ago. He had no awards, residencies, scholarships, or something, which is linked to literature and literary career, but he made himself on these social platforms, and now he's one of the strongest voice in contemporary Ukrainian poetry. And for example, he can gather more than 400 people for event in some cities. It is worth to mention Serhiy Zhadan. I think that he is voice number one in Ukrainian literature now, and very symbolic person, because when the war started, he lives in Kharkiv, and he decided to stay in Kharkiv, not to leave the city, and it was very symbolic gesture for all of us. And I remember his posts on his Facebook page during these first days of the invasion, "Над містом майорять наші прапори," and it was like reports from the besieged city. And it was also for Kharkiv residents, it was important that one of the symbols of Ukrainian Kharkiv, prominent writer, is still in the city. After the invasion, he became a volunteer and make a lot of wonderful things, and now he went voluntarily to the army and served in military brigade Khartia. I would like to finish with it is Kozak System, very popular music band, and I would like to finish with my own story. I became a volunteer after the war started, so I dedicate my time to fundraise money and to buy vehicles, SUV vehicles, pickup trucks, and ambulances for Ukrainian army. And so far I bought more than 300 vehicles and made 50 trips or caravans to the front line, and it is actually my main job now. So I quit active literary life. I'm writing only nonfiction and some kind of diary notes now, and dedicate my time to help Ukrainian army. Thank you very much for your attention, and I am open for your questions and remarks.
Thank you, Andriy, for a really powerful and important presentation. I think all of us who have paid attention to this story understand how really remarkable and powerful the cultural dimension of this war has been, particularly since Putin has proclaimed there's no such thing as Ukrainian culture, and yet every day there's evidence of a vibrant and important culture. Just an hour ago, I received a notice there's a new theater in Kharkiv that's opening up that's going to produce new contemporary works. And a city, the Kharkiv story is really remarkable because the city has been so battered, and yet the dance scene, the music scene, the artistic galleries are just moving on, and this theater is the latest example of it. I also will make one note, and then we'll turn to questions. Another part of this story that's very important, and you don't touch on it, but I think should be remembered, is the growing visibility of Ukrainian cultural life outside of Ukraine. If we look at theater, there have been new productions of new Ukrainian plays in Berlin, in London, in New York. There was a Ukrainian Contemporary Theater Festival in Hong Kong. Part of what's happened is the attention that the war has given to Ukraine has really brought this cultural renaissance to the international community in ways that had never been the case before. So I think that's an important dimension. I want to ask one question, and then we'll open it up. And it has to do with something that was in the New York Times today, and I think several of us had heard about this. And you mentioned Okean Elzy, and apparently there was some controversy or attempt to create a controversy about concert goers being stopped and asked for their documents by military recruiters. And I'm wondering how you respond to that story, because it does seem, it's beginning to as they say, have legs, is beginning to pop up, and it was in the Times today. So if you could just comment on that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your question. Yes, that's true. After the big concert I mentioned in Palace of Sports in Ukraine, people who were leaving their area, their documents were checked by our military service, but actually it made the story because it is Okean Elze and it is very popular, but it is everyday life in routine in Ukraine. And for example, in different Ukrainian cities, when you are going somewhere, you have to take your documents with you because it is martial law, and of course you have to be prepared for this check. And in different areas, so for example, when you go to the supermarket, or usually when you go from one region to another, from city to city, you have these blog posts and they are checking your documents. So I think that it is nothing, I was not shocked by this news. It is everyday routine, and it became loud only because, it was Okean Elze concert and so on. But I don't think that we have some kind of conspiracy after it. It is normal. It is normal situation, and actually, because we really need new people in the army, and unfortunately, not so much people want to go voluntarily now because it is already 30 years of the war, and that is why it is obvious that they use some kind of mass gathering of the people, because you see people and you can do your work faster than, for example, going from flat to the flat and checking documents and so on. So it is okay.
Okay.
I'm checked every few times a week. So
Okay. We'll go right here. Please identify yourself, and we're getting you a microphone.
Hello, my name's Ujjwala Palluri, and I'm a private citizen in a personal capacity. And my question for you is, given the Carpathian Mountains, the Transcarpathian Mountains, the Danube, what steps is Ukraine taking to turn the cities that are at the border of the Carpathians and the Danube into economic, political, and cultural centers that can perhaps serve as a way to bolster the front lines, if that makes sense?
I think that my region and my hometown, Uzhhorod, is very important, especially now, because we are located, we are gates for Southern Europe, for Ukraine, and we are open to the Balkans, to Italy, Austria, and so on. And actually, from the very first days of the invasion, we work as a big logistical hub for international humanitarian aid, first of all, and after that, big international hub for weapons and ammunition and so on. And we pay a lot of attention to build some kind of new ties with our neighbors, with different, not only countries, our neighboring countries, but also with region cooperation, city-to-city cooperation, and it is one of the most productive things we do. And I think that Ukrainian even politics should pay more attention for cooperation with our neighbors, because we can receive Patriot system, but we need some kind of a border to cross and to enter it to Ukraine, and that is why, for example, we in our institute work hard on building cooperation with Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia, and because we are also active in Bessarabia and work with Bulgarian national minority, we are connected to Bulgaria. And when the war started, we received a lot of military support from Bulgaria. Especially it was important because it was Soviet era ammunition, and our artillery systems were were used to it. So yes, we work in order to develop this region as gate and to strengthen this trans-Danubian or Central European cooperation.
This actually opens up an interesting question that I know you care about, and it has to do with, well, you mentioned that your institute has been involved in the studies of national minority rights, and it has to do with the tapestry of connections that are flowing into this new Ukrainian culture, and what are the roles of national minorities, of different ethnic diversity in creating a new Ukrainian culture? If you could say a word or two about that.
Yeah, it is very important question, and I think that during this very dangerous time, very turbulent time of the full-scale war, we are very lucky that we have national minorities in Ukraine, because it is some kind of natural component of democratic life. And for example, only a few weeks ago, very important exhibition of Tiberi Silvashi. He has Hungarian origins, and he is one of the most expensive Ukrainian contemporary painters of the elder generation. Started in KU, and it was so popular and important that I think that it is natural sign of supporting, and we try to pay a lot of attention now to build real, open and democratic society. And of course, national minority rights are in our focus, because without it, it will be impossible for us to move forward to EU and transatlantic integration. And I think that we actually made huge, really huge developments in this sphere. And from time to time, we have these problems, for example, with Hungary. Yeah? First of all, you know very well about it, but in Ukraine, we are really eager to build open society in which everyone can feel freely. And of course, national minority of, for example, rights of Hungarian national minorities now are in focus of our politics, and I think that in few weeks you will see wonderful results of our work, and maybe most of the question topics will be solved. We are very close to it, and I think that actually war and contribution of national minorities and of Ukraine, and for example, tragedy of Crimean Tatars who has no homeland because Crimea is occupied now, and their dedication to to this goal of defending Ukraine, their dedication to serve in the army and to liberate their own homeland is so huge that I think that war, actually one of the side results of it is the building of new kind of Ukrainian identity. And when I was mentioning that a lot of people in eastern and southern Ukrainian cities and megapolises are coming for Ukrainian events, cultural events, are buying books in Ukrainian and so on, it is actually symbol of this great shape within the society, because people who before the full-scale invasion were indifferent for these topics, for example, and were, for example, Russian speakers in everyday life and so on, they are doing their best to learn Ukrainian, to enrich their vocabulary, and actually I see it in my hometown. We receive a lot of refugees from the occupied territories, and they really invest even their money into education of their children, so they want them to speak Ukrainian, and it is real shift in Ukrainian history. So I think that when we speak about this topic, we are on the right way, and developings are quite good. Positive, yeah.
I'm going to take, I have 3 questions, but let me remind people online, if they want to submit questions, to send them to, by email at kennan@wilsoncenter.org, or on X @Kennan Institute, or through the Kennan Institute Facebook page. I have 3 questions, and then we'll begin to wrap up. And I'm going to start here, and we'll go around the room. So Sergey Zhuk.
Andriy Lyubka, a fellow at Wilson Center. I have a very simple but probably a very complicated question. Any cultural revival needs money, needs financial resources. What are resources for struggling Ukrainian culture now? How oligarchs like Akhmetov, Poroshenko, Pinchuk, and people, just middle-class people in Ukraine with money, helping and funding this wonderful revival.
Okay, before you answer, let's get the second question over here, and then we'll come back to you. And right there,
Thank you.
and then we'll take the question down here last.
Remarkable. Thank you for your contribution. And my question more or less follows on the first in a more lengthy way, perhaps. My name is Anita Parlow. I was a Fulbright scholar in Iceland, and I've been covering war zones and gross deprivations of human rights, however, not in Ukraine. My question has a couple of parts to it. One is, when you speak of the destruction of culture and buildings that house such, there's an intent element there, certainly. And is that a component of allegations and claims that may be brought in regarding genocide with respect to international or domestic or other forms? And secondly, in the context of culture, if I may, when one looks at the impact of the United States colonial government as it was building a nation, and the attack on indigenous cultures, pretty much broadside and fully, certainly a genocide, and the response in the arts, I think, was quite extraordinary, or maybe not, but it was to keep on reflecting 2,000 years of history, to not stop. It was not about this is what's happening now, it's this is where we've been for 2,000 years, and we'll be here for 2,000 more years. And I wonder if that's a reflection. And then the similar question is, what can the U.S. do to better provide support?
Thank you.
Okay.
So I will start with the question about the money, and it is very important. Thank you very much for it. Paradox of the situation is that we don't receive any support from the government, because all of the budget goes to military spheres. We don't receive support from municipalities and so on. So our main supporters are not also the oligarchs. Actually, I'm not sure they are active in this field. Our main support is from Ukrainians. This is a paradox, that people are going to, for example, to bookshops, and I have some kind of data about it. I skip it, but it is interesting, because our growth, our book market now is 6 billions of Ukrainian hryvnias. 2023 was the best year in Ukrainian book market during last 30 years. Yeah, so we are facing a deep economic crisis. A lot of people were mobilized to the army. A lot of people went out as refugees. So we have problems with workers at the prints factories and so on and so on. And still, 2023 was the best year in Ukrainian book market history. And growth is really incredible, because number of printed books increased by 73% last year, and print run for 200%. I mentioned that a lot of people are buying Ukrainian books in order to, to enrich their vocabulary, to learn Ukrainian and so on. So it is like very, very obvious proof to it. And actually it is regular Ukrainian people who are going to cultural events like theater performances, concerts, and so on. So they are our base to grow, and maybe their mental, their psychological state, inspires them to go somewhere, because during these very dangerous, very hard times, cultural events give you these feelings that you are normal human beings, that you are not animal who is hiding from the danger, and that is why it is so popular. Yeah, not only middle class, but even people who live more modestly, they go to these events and invest into Ukrainian culture. Yeah, that's the short answer.
I can add to this actually about the oligarchs, because Rinat Akhmetov, I can bring his example. He was one of the owners of, in Mariupol, a lot of steel plants. When Azovstal was completely destroyed and seized by the Russians, this wonderful documentary was made, 20 Days in Mariupol, by filmmaker and Associated Press journalist, a team of them. So Mr. Akhmetov provided funds to send this team to the United States. So they made a number of events and established partnership with the Meridian Cultural Center, and also bringing voice of Ukrainian cultural figures to the United States and in European countries. And of course, Mr. Pinchuk continues his effort with intellectual advocacy. The Yalta European Strategy Conference is still ongoing, very popular, serves as a platform for international intellectuals, journalists, former politicians and state officials visit Ukraine and appreciate everything that is going on. So I believe all of them are very supportive of cultural efforts and the war efforts including. And if I may add about the U.S. support, because there was a question about what the United States government can do, I can say that the current administration and the team of public diplomacy at the State Department is probably our best friends at the embassy. I'm very pleased that a colleague of mine, dear colleague of mine, Nancy Selvinsky, is now with us, who serves as advisor to current Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy, Ms. Lee Satterfield. And I just don't want to take the time to list all the projects that we did together, but believe me that the number of events, starting from film diplomacy, music diplomacy, various residences, performances at the Kennedy Center became regular nowadays. And for residents of Washington, D.C., you know yourself how many beautiful performances we had at the Kennedy Center, starting from United Ukrainian Ballet, Ukrainian Freedom Orchestra. The National Ballet of Ukraine is now touring the United States, and their first performance was at the Kennedy Center. So we're extremely thankful. Can we do more? Probably yes. But I believe that the current effort had been absolutely spectacular and stunning, and we cannot be more thankful for it.
And just a quick footnote, and then we'll go back to the other questions. We shouldn't forget European funders. The Germans in particular have invested heavily in Ukrainian cultural institutions. In theater, the British Council has played a huge role. The Italian Ministry of Culture has adopted Odessa cultural institutions. So part of the story is that the rest of the world is discovering there's something valuable to Ukrainian culture and is investing. So I just wanted to mention that. And now we can go back to the other question.
Yes, thank you. Last question was about the destruction and genocide. And yes, of course, I can agree with you that it is very clear that all of the destructions and Russian policy on occupied territories prove the fact that we are facing the genocidal character war now in Ukraine, and this cultural cleansing of landscape, it is only one side of it. But why I mentioned Volodymyr Vakulenko, and I highlighted the fact that he was not the strongest voice in Ukrainian culture. Before the full-scale invasion started, President Biden told stated that Russians are creating some kind of kill lists of Ukrainians, yeah, when they are entering some territories, they are searching for some kind of people. And state servants, veterans of the army, and cultural activists are on this list. And Volodymyr Vakulenko, his example of the guy, of punk rock poet who lived in a small village and was actually killed by shots in his head, yeah, proves that this kill list, it is not a fantasy, it is a fact. And Russians are trying to not only to erase, to delete every mark of Ukrainian presence these territories, but also to kill people who represent Ukrainian identity and who can inspire others to embrace Ukrainian identity.
Okay, we have one final short question.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentation. My name is Jessica Nash, and I've worked with OSCE as a long-term election observer in Ukraine multiple times. You mentioned about the formulation of new Ukrainian identity. I was wondering if you also noticed new forms of Ukrainian cultural expression. So, for example, new types of songs or new types of dances, or are you finding that people are turning back to more traditional forms of cultural expression? And then a quick question. Have you also noticed in your research other cultures having the same sort of embrace of their culture during conflict, or do you think this is something unique to Ukraine?
Ukrainian cultural life is now very vibrant, and you can find very different forms of cultural expression. And I think that the easiest way is to artists who are independent, who are isolated, because you don't need any kind of support or institutional frames for it, and that is why maybe poetry is #1 now in Ukraine. Of course, because it helps you emotionally when you write a poem. Immediately after that, you feel relief. It is natural and it is like medical therapy. And I think the same with painting, and you can do it whenever you want. And of course, it is combined with different modern era technical possibilities. So these reels and stories are very popular now in Ukraine, and every emerging poet try to experiment with this stuff. And yeah, it is some kind of new phenomenon. But also, I would like to highlight that what is, I will return to this question about money, because it is really important. And for example, in my own experience, I saw that Ukrainians really, one kind of shape which we are facing now, it is that Ukrainians are starting to pay for their cultural interests. So, for example, before the full-scale invasion, it was quite popular and wide when people use some kind of torrents, pirates, possibilities to download some movie or audio book or PDF book or so on. So now it is already in the past, and it is some kind of of gesture of support to Ukrainian culture that they use official ways, and they pay even when they want to listen to the music or buy e-book for Kindle. Yeah, it was not like this 3 years ago. It is also a great shift. And one other significant thing that we had now, it is some kind of military new wave of cultural products and works from people who are serving now in the army. For them, culture was not main part of their identity or everyday life before the war, but now when they are in the trenches, when they are serving, and from time to time they have a lot of time, in solitude and so on, cultural expression became very important for them in order to take this emotional relief. And we have new writers who emerged actually in the army, like Pavlo Vyshebabe. It is not only him, it is really a wave. And we already have some kind of veterans publishing house who is publishing only, soldiers and people from military sphere. But I think that we will receive more, like in this famous story of Hemingway, we will receive much more after the war, because we have to to keep some distance, to rethink everything and to create masterpieces.
Andriy, I want to close by asking you a personal question, okay? In addition to you appearing here in 2017, I noted that Odessa Review in 2018 wrote the following about you. On the surface, Andriy Lyubka is hardly an intimidating presence. With his boyish face and long sandy hair, he wouldn't seem out of place in a Literature 101 course. Today, he's likely Ukrainian's biggest young literary talent, a giant among the country's most seasoned writers. I'd like to ask you, as the Andriy Lyubka of 2024, what would you say to that young writer of 2018? In other words, how has the last 6 years, changed your perspective on yourself as a creative writer?
Thank you for this very deep question. I think that what has changed and why I started to volunteer and dedicate my time and all my professional links and with audience and so on to this volunteer job, the major thing is that I realized that it is impossible to create one good career separately from the whole scene. That you will be not happy if you are famous, but you live, after the big fence and you are isolated from other people. So if we really need to be successful, it is not only about one writer, but about the whole literature, about the whole book market. And if we want to, to live in normal country, to live normal life, we have to pay attention and to invest also in reforming of the country, not only into your own personal career and development, but also share something with your society, share something with your country, and dedicate part of you to this work. And I think that I would like to recall these things, that we also have to export word of Peremoha, not only victory. We are not working to make victory closer, but it is very nice in Ukrainian language because word Peremoha means that you have to do something more that you can. Mohti, it is you can, yeah, ty możesz, you can, but Peremoha, it is to go a step further, to go beyond yourself and to give a bit more than you can. And this meaning of Peremoha is really powerful, and I think that it is good metaphor for whole Ukrainian society, not only cultural activists or artists, but for whole Ukrainian society, which is dedicated now to this common goal to bring victory close.
Andriy, I want to thank you for a remarkable presentation. I hope it's not 6 years before you come back. You clearly have a lot of insights. I also want to mention on the issue of cultural destruction, on November 7th, the Kennan Institute and the Smithsonian Institution team that's been working to help preserve Ukrainian cultural monuments will be talking about the work in Ukraine of the Smithsonian and American conservation people. So that's here on November 7th. So thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.